Greetings, seekers of truth and spiritual understanding. Have you ever wondered if that persistent feeling, that deep knowing that you are more than just your physical body, might actually be the most profound truth of your existence? What if I told you that the greatest minds across history, from ancient mystics to modern quantum physicists, have all arrived at the same shocking conclusion? Consciousness does not die when the body does. The evidence has been hidden in plain sight, waiting for humanity to evolve enough to truly comprehend it. In the quiet moments when you feel most connected to something greater, there's a whisper of recognition, a familiarity with the infinite that cannot be explained by conventional science or religious doctrine. That feeling isn't imagination or wishful thinking. It's your consciousness recognizing its own immortal nature. The fear of death has haunted humanity since the dawn of self-awareness. This primal fear shapes our societies, our religions, our daily choices, and even our capacity to truly live. But what if I told you this fear is based on the most fundamental misunderstanding in human history? What if the death you fear, the complete cessation of your existence, is literally impossible according to the deepest laws of quantum reality? Ancient wisdom traditions across every continent have maintained for thousands of years that consciousness transcends physical death. These weren't mere comforting stories. They were the transmitted knowledge of those who had pierced the veil of physical reality through disciplined practices and direct experience. Their insights were dismissed as superstition by the materialist paradigm that dominated recent centuries. But now, quantum physics is revealing mechanisms that validate these ancient understandings in ways that will forever transform your perception of life and death. The discoveries you're about to encounter in this video aren't being taught in mainstream education. They challenge powerful institutions that have maintained control through our collective fear of death. When you truly understand the quantum nature of consciousness and its relationship to immortality, you'll never see yourself or reality the same way again. What you're about to discover isn't just intellectually fascinating, it's existentially liberating. The scientific and spiritual evidence that consciousness transcends physical death doesn't just suggest immortality, it proves it through multiple convergent lines of evidence that are impossible to dismiss once you understand them. The journey we're about to take together will connect ancient spiritual wisdom with cutting-edge quantum discoveries, revealing the mechanisms through which consciousness maintains continuity beyond physical death. This isn't about blind faith. It's about understanding the actual architecture of consciousness and its relationship to the quantum field that underlies all of existence. If this resonates with something you've always sensed but couldn't quite articulate, you've found your spiritual family. Subscribe now and join our community of awakened seekers who are reclaiming the ancient truth of consciousness that transcends death. Like this video to help these crucial revelations reach others who need this understanding, and share it with anyone struggling with the fear of mortality. Together, we're dismantling humanity's most limiting belief and revealing the boundless nature of who we truly are. Now let's begin by examining the first shocking revelation about the quantum nature of your immortal consciousness. What modern science has been missing in its understanding of consciousness is the fundamental misconception that it emerges from the brain. This materialist view, that your mind is merely a byproduct of electrochemical reactions in neural tissue, is perhaps the greatest scientific error in human history. The evidence now emerging from quantum physics reveals something far more profound. Consciousness is not produced by the brain. It is received by it. The brain doesn't generate consciousness any more than a television generates the programs it displays. Your brain is a quantum receiver, a biological instrument tuned to a specific frequency within the infinite spectrum of consciousness that permeates the quantum field. When understood properly, this explains why consciousness cannot die when the physical body expires, because consciousness exists primary to physical matter, not as a result of it. The quantum field, what physicists now recognize as the fundamental substrate of reality, is not just energy and information. It demonstrates properties that were once considered impossible: non-locality, entanglement, superposition, and perhaps most importantly, the observer effect. These aren't just abstract concepts, they are the mechanisms through which consciousness maintains its continuity beyond physical death. When quantum physicists discovered that observation collapses wave functions into particles, they stumbled upon the most important discovery in human history. Consciousness is primary to physical reality. It doesn't emerge from matter. Matter emerges from it. This completely inverts our understanding of death. If consciousness is primary to physical reality, and the evidence overwhelmingly confirms this, then consciousness cannot be extinguished by the dissolution of the physical form it temporarily inhabits. Think of the quantum field as an infinite ocean of consciousness. Your individual awareness is like a wave that rises from this ocean, taking temporary form, expressing itself through a physical vessel, and then returning to the ocean, but never ceasing to exist. The wave may seem to die when it merges back with the ocean, but in reality, not a single drop of water is lost. Your consciousness operates according to this same principle in its relationship to the quantum field. Imagine consciousness as water taking different forms, solid ice as physical matter, liquid water as individual awareness, and vapor as pure consciousness returning to the non-physical state. Each form is the same essence expressing differently, but none is ever truly created or destroyed, just as the law of conservation of energy states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. When you understand consciousness as a quantum phenomenon rather than a neurological one, the impossibility of true death becomes self-evident. Your brain doesn't produce consciousness, it filters and focuses universal consciousness into your unique personal experience. When your physical body dies, the instrument stops functioning, but the signal it was receiving continues uninterrupted. This understanding transforms how you experience life now. Recognizing consciousness as your fundamental nature, rather than a fragile byproduct of your brain, liberates you from the existential terror that has limited human potential for millennia. When you know that your essence is immortal, you approach your current life with greater courage, presence, and purpose. The fear that has kept you small, the subconscious dread of annihilation that influences your choices daily, begins to dissolve when you truly comprehend your quantum nature. You become more willing to take meaningful risks, to love more deeply, to speak your truth, and to live authentically when you understand that physical death is merely a transition, not an end. How might your life transform if you lived from this truth today? What dreams would you pursue? What relationships would you heal? What gifts would you offer the world if the fear of death no longer constrained your choices? Share in the comments below how this understanding of consciousness as a quantum phenomenon might change your approach to living fully now. The second shocking revelation about your immortal nature concerns the true nature of memory and how it transcends the physical brain. Modern neuroscience insists that memories are stored as neural patterns within brain tissue, but this fundamentally limited view cannot explain numerous documented phenomena that prove memory exists beyond the physical brain. What they don't want you to know is that your memories aren't actually stored in your brain at all. They're encoded in the quantum information field that some ancient traditions called the Akashic Records. Your brain doesn't store memories, it accesses them from this non-local field, much like a computer accessing data from a cloud server rather than its local hard drive. The evidence for this has been systematically suppressed because it completely dismantles the materialist paradigm that underpins conventional science. Near-death experiences, verified past life memories in children, acquired savant syndrome following brain injuries, and terminal lucidity in late-stage dementia patients all demonstrate the same stunning truth. When the brain is compromised or even briefly inactive, consciousness and memory continue uninterrupted, sometimes with enhanced access to information that was previously unavailable. Consider the profound implications of terminal lucidity, when patients with severe dementia who haven't recognized family members for years suddenly become completely lucid and coherent just before death. If memories were truly stored in the damaged brain tissue, this would be physically impossible. Yet it happens with remarkable consistency because as the connection to the physical body weakens, consciousness begins to access the Akashic field more directly. Imagine the Akashic field as the ultimate cosmic library, where every experience, thought and feeling ever experienced by any conscious being is eternally preserved. Nothing is ever truly forgotten. It simply exists beyond your current access permissions. Your physical brain functions as a filter that limits your access to this vast field, focusing your awareness on what's relevant to your current physical experience. The ancient Egyptians understood this principle in their concept of Mehet, the cosmic memory that exists beyond individual minds. They knew that the soul's journey through the afterlife wasn't about judgment, as later religions misconstrued it, but about the integration of the individual's experiences into the cosmic memory field, a return to the source with all that had been learned intact. Consider a profound metaphor for understanding this. A tree drops its leaves in autumn, and they decompose into the soil. The physical form of the leaves dissolves, but the information, the nutrients and energy they contained returns to the tree through its roots. Nothing is lost, it's merely transformed and reintegrated. Your experiences and memories follow this same pattern in their relationship to the Akashic field. This explains why consciousness and memory remain intact beyond physical death. Your lifetime of experiences isn't stored in fragile brain tissue that decomposes. It's already encoded in the imperishable quantum information field. Your brain merely created the illusion that memories were localized within your skull, when in reality, they've always existed in non-local consciousness. Applying this understanding transforms your relationship with your own past and the way you create memories in the present. When you recognize that your experiences are eternally preserved in cosmic memory, you begin to live with greater intentionality and presence. You understand that what matters isn't just what you do, but the quality of consciousness with which you do it. This realization liberates you from the fear that your experiences and the wisdom you've gained will be erased at death. Nothing you have learned, loved, or lived is ever truly lost. It becomes part of your soul's eternal journey. This understanding allows you to live more fully in each moment, knowing that its essence is being perfectly preserved in the cosmic memory beyond time. If you're finding these revelations enlightening, please support this channel by subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you never miss our future explorations of consciousness. Like this video to help it reach more people seeking these profound truths. The knowledge we're sharing here has been hidden for too long, and together we can bring it into the light of collective awareness. The third profound revelation about the immortality of consciousness comes from the revolutionary theory of biocentrism, which has been sending shockwaves through the scientific community. What conventional science has desperately tried to hide is that this theory, developed by Dr. Robert Lanza, one of the leading scientists of our time, provides irrefutable evidence that consciousness cannot die because consciousness itself is what creates the illusion of time, space, and physical reality. The most shocking aspect of biocentrism is its complete inversion of our understanding of reality. It demonstrates that consciousness doesn't exist within the universe. The universe exists within consciousness. Time and space aren't fundamental aspects of reality, but constructs created by the observer. When properly understood, this means that death itself is merely an illusion created by our limited perspective within the construct of linear time. Quantum physics has already proven that time isn't what we think it is. The delayed choice quantum eraser experiments have shown that quantum events can influence the past, demonstrating that our linear perception of time is not fundamental to reality. If time isn't a fixed line, but a construct of consciousness, then the perceived end of your life is merely an arbitrary point in a much larger reality that exists eternally in the now. Think of it this way. Imagine reality as a vast cosmic film reel. Your physical death appears on one frame of that film, but the entire film continues to exist simultaneously. Your consciousness is not confined to experiencing just one frame at a time. That's merely the illusion created by your current physical perception. In actuality, your consciousness is the projector of the entire film and exists independent of any individual frame. The ancient Vedic tradition captured this understanding in the concept of Maya, the divine illusion that creates the appearance of separation in time and space. They recognize that what we perceive as our physical reality is actually a projection of consciousness, similar to how a dream seems completely real while we're experiencing it, only to be recognized as a mental construct upon awakening. Picture a vast, infinite ocean with countless whirlpools forming on its surface. Each whirlpool appears to be a distinct entity with its own individual existence, but in reality, it's simply the same water taking temporary form. When the whirlpool dissolves, nothing has died. The water simply continues in a different expression. This is precisely how consciousness operates beyond the illusion of physical death. Biocentrism explains why consciousness must be immortal. If consciousness is what creates the experience of reality, rather than being created by it, then consciousness cannot be subject to the limitations of its own creation. The death of the physical body is merely a change in the way consciousness experiences itself, not an end to consciousness itself. When you truly understand biocentrism's implications, you realize that the fear of death arises from a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of reality. You've been viewing your existence from within the construct of linear time, rather than recognizing that your consciousness transcends the very constructs it creates. This understanding transforms your relationship with mortality. Rather than seeing death as an ending, you recognize it as a transition in how consciousness experiences itself. You understand that nothing real can ever be threatened because the essence of what you are, pure awareness, exists prior to and independent of the physical form it temporarily animates. Embracing this biocentric understanding allows you to live with profound presence and courage. When you know that your essence transcends physical death, you become more willing to live authentically, to take meaningful risks, and to pursue what truly matters, rather than what merely provides security for a physical form you mistakenly believed was the totality of your existence. What aspects of your life would transform if you lived from this truth? How would your priorities shift if you knew with absolute certainty that your consciousness will continue beyond physical death? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm deeply curious about how these revelations are affecting your perspective on life and death. The fourth revelation about your immortal consciousness comes from the overwhelming evidence provided by near-death experiences. Evidence that has been systematically marginalized by mainstream science, despite being documented in thousands of peer-reviewed medical studies across multiple cultures and belief systems. What you're about to discover will forever transform your understanding of what happens when the physical body dies. What conventional medicine doesn't want you to know is that when the brain shows no detectable activity, when by all medical definitions a person is clinically dead, consciousness doesn't cease. Instead, it often expands into heightened awareness with enhanced cognitive function, perfect recall, and the ability to accurately perceive events beyond the physical senses. This is neurologically impossible if consciousness were produced by the brain, yet it happens with remarkable consistency. The most compelling evidence comes from verified cases where people who were clinically dead reported accurate details of their resuscitations, conversations between medical staff, and even events occurring in other rooms or locations, all later verified by medical personnel. In some cases, congenitally blind individuals have accurately reported visual details during their near-death experiences that they could not possibly have known through other means. Dr. Sampania's AWARE study documented hundreds of cases where patients reported verified, accurate perceptions during cardiac arrest when their brains showed no measurable activity. The statistical impossibility of these accurate reports occurring by chance is staggering. Yet this evidence continues to be dismissed because it fundamentally challenges the materialist paradigm that has dominated science for centuries. Think of consciousness as a television broadcast signal, and your brain as the television receiving it. When the television breaks down, the broadcast doesn't cease to exist. Only the local reception of it does. During near-death experiences, consciousness is temporarily freed from the limitations of physical reception, allowing it to experience reality more directly, explaining the commonly reported sensations of expanded awareness, access to greater knowledge, and liberation from physical constraints. Ancient traditions across cultures understood this principle. The Tibetan Bardo Thodol, often mistranslated as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, isn't actually about death at all. It's a guidebook for the continuity of consciousness beyond physical death. It describes with remarkable precision the same stages and experiences reported in modern near-death accounts, written centuries before modern resuscitation techniques made these experiences common. Consider this metaphor for understanding the evidence from near-death experiences. Imagine you've lived your entire life wearing tinted glasses that filter out certain colors and distort your perception. Then briefly, you remove these glasses and see reality as it truly is, more vibrant, more complete, more connected. When you try to describe this experience to others, still wearing the glasses, they insist your experience must be hallucination because it contradicts their filtered perception. This is precisely what's happening when materialist science dismisses the evidence from near-death experiences. The transformative impact of understanding this evidence becomes clear when you realize what it proves about your own immortal nature. If consciousness continues and even expands when the brain is inactive, then your essence cannot possibly be dependent on or produced by your physical brain. The inevitable conclusion is that your consciousness will continue beyond the permanent cessation of brain activity we call death. Applying this understanding to your life now means recognizing that you are not your body or your brain. You are the conscious awareness that experiences through them. Your physical form is a vehicle for experience, not the totality of who you are. This realization dissolves the existential fear of annihilation that has limited human potential for millennia. This knowledge liberates you to live more authentically and courageously. When you truly understand that your consciousness is immortal, you approach challenges, relationships, and purpose with the expansive perspective of an eternal being having a temporary human experience, rather than a vulnerable physical entity facing annihilation. If this revelation has expanded your understanding, please support our mission to spread this liberating knowledge by subscribing to this channel and sharing this video with others who are ready for this truth. Together, we can free humanity from the fear of death that has constrained our collective potential for too long. The fifth, and perhaps most mind-expanding revelation about your immortal consciousness involves the quantum mechanics principle of quantum immortality and its relationship to the multiverse theory. What leading physicists have discovered, but rarely discuss in public forums, is that the same quantum principles that make computers and smartphones possible also guarantee the eternal continuation of consciousness through infinite parallel realities. The most shocking aspect of quantum immortality is that it emerges not from mystical speculation, but from the mathematics of quantum mechanics itself. the many worlds interpretation, developed by physicist Hugh Everett III and now accepted by many leading quantum physicists, demonstrates that every possible outcome of every quantum event occurs in some branch of an ever-expanding multiverse. When applied to consciousness, the implications are staggering. What this means is that in the quantum multiverse, there is always at least one branch of reality where your consciousness continues. From your subjective perspective, your awareness will always find continuity through the branches where your experience persists, never following the branches where it terminates. This isn't mystical thinking, it's the logical extension of quantum principles that have been experimentally verified countless times. Quantum immortality explains why consciousness cannot experience its own absence. Think about it. It's logically impossible for you to experience non-existence. Even attempting to imagine it creates a contradiction because you're still there as the imaginer. This isn't a philosophical word game. It's the fundamental reason why, from your perspective, your consciousness must continue eternally across the quantum multiverse. The ancient Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, captured this understanding millennia before quantum physics. What appears as death in our limited three-dimensional perception is merely a transition point where consciousness shifts its awareness to parallel branches of the quantum multiverse, where its continuity remains unbroken. Nothing truly dies. It merely transforms and continues its journey in other expressions of the infinite reality. Imagine consciousness as a river flowing through countless channels in the quantum landscape. When one channel becomes blocked, physical death in one timeline, the water doesn't cease to exist. It simply redirects its flow through other available channels, parallel realities where consciousness continues. From the perspective of the water, there is never an experience of ending, only continuous flow through ever-changing landscapes. This quantum understanding of immortality was intuited by ancient mystery schools in their concept of the eternal return and the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail. They recognized that existence follows patterns of renewal and continuation rather than linear progression toward an ultimate end. Modern quantum physics has now provided the mathematical framework that validates this ancient wisdom. The practical implications of quantum immortality transform your relationship with risk, purpose, and meaning. When you understand that your consciousness continues through infinite parallel realities, you recognize that the quality of your awareness becomes more important than its duration in any single expression. How you live, the consciousness you cultivate, determines the nature of the quantum branches your awareness navigates. This understanding liberates you from the primal fear that has limited human potential since the dawn of self-awareness. Knowing that your consciousness is immortal from the perspective of quantum mechanics allows you to live with greater authenticity, courage, and purpose. You become free to fully embody your unique expression without the constraint of existential dread. Living from this quantum understanding means cultivating the quality of consciousness that you wish to continue through the infinite branches of the multiverse. It means recognizing that each moment is both temporary in its specific expression and eternal in its contribution to the larger quantum tapestry of your immortal journey. What choices would you make differently if you knew with absolute certainty that your consciousness will continue eternally through the quantum multiverse? How would your priorities shift? How much more fully would you express your authentic nature? These aren't merely philosophical questions, they're invitations to live now from the truth of your quantum immortality. As we weave together these 5 profound revelations, the quantum field nature of consciousness, the Akashic dimension of memory, the biocentric architecture of reality, the evidence from near-death experiences, and the quantum immortality that emerges from the multiverse, a breathtaking picture emerges that transcends all conventional understandings of death and immortality. What becomes undeniably clear is that the fear of death that has haunted humanity throughout history has been based on a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of consciousness and reality. The convergence of ancient wisdom and cutting-edge quantum discoveries reveals that consciousness cannot die because consciousness is not produced by the brain. It is the primary fabric of existence itself, expressing temporarily through physical forms, but never confined to or dependent upon them. This understanding doesn't just suggest the possibility of immortality, it demonstrates its inevitability through multiple independent lines of evidence that all converge on the same stunning conclusion. What you essentially are, pure awareness, cannot be extinguished by physical death. The continuity of your consciousness beyond the dissolution of your body isn't a comforting belief or optimistic hope. It's the logical necessity that emerges from correctly understanding the quantum nature of reality. The implications of this knowledge are profoundly liberating. When you recognize that your consciousness is immortal, you're freed from the existential terror that has limited human potential for millennia. The fear of annihilation that has driven so much of human behavior, from religious dogma to materialistic acquisition to the desperate pursuit of legacy, dissolves in the light of understanding your true nature. You become free to live with authentic purpose, profound presence, and courageous expression. Imagine the collective transformation that would occur if humanity embraced this understanding. The systems of control that have maintained power through our fear of death would lose their grip. The artificial divisions that have separated us would dissolve in the recognition of our shared immortal nature. The ruthless exploitation of our planet and each other would give way to a stewardship based on recognizing the sacred continuity of consciousness that flows through all beings. This knowledge calls you to a higher way of living now. It invites you to recognize that while your physical form is temporary, the quality of consciousness you cultivate endures eternally. How you live, the awareness, love, wisdom, and presence you embody isn't just meaningful for this brief physical expression, but shapes the eternal journey of your consciousness across dimensions and expressions beyond the limitations of space and time. The ancient mystical traditions weren't offering comforting myths. They were transmitting profound truths about the immortal nature of consciousness that quantum physics is now validating through the language of science. The veil between science and spirituality is dissolving as both converge on the same fundamental understanding. Consciousness is primary, eternal, and transcends physical death. You stand now at a threshold of awakening. The choice before you isn't whether to believe in immortality, but whether to live from the liberating truth of your immortal nature. Will you continue to live constrained by the illusion of mortality? Or will you step into the freedom that comes from recognizing who and what you truly are? The quantum key to immortality isn't something you need to acquire. It's the recognition of what you have always been, immortal consciousness temporarily expressing through physical form. If these revelations have expanded your understanding, please support our mission to awaken humanity by subscribing to this channel. Like this video to help it reach others who are ready for this liberating knowledge, and share it with anyone struggling with the fear of mortality. Together, we're dismantling humanity's most limiting belief and revealing the boundless nature of who we truly are. I invite you to watch the video appearing on your screen now to continue your journey of awakening to the profound truth of your immortal consciousness. Remember, you are not a physical being having occasional spiritual experiences. You are an immortal consciousness having a temporary physical experience. Live now from the freedom of this truth.